But first, everybody, Kevin McCarthy elected Speaker in a historic post-midnight 15th ballot. I was watching it glued to the TV. The House finally able to swear in newly elected lawmakers who have been waiting all week for the chamber to open. Our national correspondent, Logan Raddick, is standing by with more. Logan.
Well, Rita, it was definitely a suspenseful night because remember, the House had adjourned until 10 o'clock and then they came back and then the 14th ballot failed. And then the House moved to a motion to adjourn until Monday at noon. And while it looked like that motion might actually pass, then some Republicans started voting no after a conversation was had between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy about some concessions, while Gaetz and some of his fellow holdouts, including Matt Rosendale, Eli Crane, Bob Good, Andy Biggs, and Lauren Boebert, they did not vote for McCarthy, but they voted present, which allowed McCarthy to hit the magic number he needed to be elected Speaker of the House on the 15th ballot. Earlier, those holdouts had been voting for other nominees from their conference, whether it be Jim Jordan, Byron Donalds, Kevin Hern, to name a few members, but they finally voted present at the end to get McCarthy over the hump after hearing the concessions that were offered among the conference. And Kevin McCarthy is promising to lead this 118th Congress, and the Republican conference as a conservative. This is what he said.
We will hold the swamp accountable. From the withdrawal of Afghanistan to the origins of COVID and to the weaponization of the FBI.
And among those concessions, there won't be spending from the Congressional Leadership Fund in primaries, so there won't be funding any primary opponents of current members of Congress. Also, some changes to the House Rules Committee, rules changes in the House, rather. More on that in a moment. Also, there would be more House Freedom Caucus members on the Rules Committee. But Lauren Boebert, one of the holdouts who voted present the last two ballots, she sort of explained why she ended up switching her vote to present from a non-McCarthy candidate. And Boebert tweeted, quote, "It's been a long week in D.C. and the pressure has been intense, but it had to be done. The 118th Congress will be one that does the business of the American people, not the special interests and lobbyists." So the House returns, Rita, on Monday, and that is when another potential fight is looming. So the Republican conference came together to elect Kevin McCarthy, the 55th Speaker of the House. Monday, the House will vote on a rules package. Those are the concessions that have been negotiated between conservatives and the more moderate Republicans. But at least one Republican is saying that he will not vote for that rules package on Monday. That is Congressman Tony Gonzalez of Texas. And if a few more Republicans were to join him and the Democrats in voting it down, then that rules package would not pass, and they'd have to go back to the drawing board in terms of drafting up some sort of rules package that could pass the full House.
Wow, very interesting. Logan, I want to ask you also about Kevin McCarthy saying basically the first thing they're going to do is vote against those 87,000 IRS agents. He made it very clear what top priority is.
Absolutely. IRS agents a priority. The border is a priority. Fiscal responsibility was one of the big concessions that you saw made from the leadership to those conservative holdouts. They wanted to make sure that they were capping spending bills, but also trying to lower the deficit. The national debt is over $31 trillion right now. So McCarthy is signaling that he will lead as a conservative, also limit the roles, the powers, rather, of Speaker of the House. But again, we'll see what happens on Monday when they vote on the rules package, because that could dictate a lot of what happens in the next Congress. Well, this Congress, because they got sworn in early this morning.
Logan, thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And here to continue the discussion now on the events of last night is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congressman, I want to ask you first off your reaction, because, boy, it's been high drama. This whole week has been pins and needles. I was watching last night. Again, the 14th vote happens. Not enough. One vote short, and then it goes to 15. First, it looked like you were going to adjourn. Then what was it like being there in the whole, just in the chamber through this whole thing?
Well, every day's been high drama. We don't know what's going on. And obviously that 14th vote was a little bit disappointing to many of us, because we were told that they had the votes and they were promised the votes, and then some of the people who allegedly had made promises didn't live up to them, and so we had to go back to the drawing board. I personally am glad that we did do this last night, that we didn't adjourn, because I think right now we're never going to get a perfect speaker. We're never going to get a perfect rules package. And it's going to look like this every single major vote that we have in the House. So get ready. We're going to be in Washington a lot, and we're going to be hashing this out because there are a lot of historic changes in a lot of these rules and what we're going through. And so it's a high-risk operation for Kevin McCarthy, our new speaker, because for the first time, he's going to be facing a very, very narrow majority with a rules package that is going to actually minimize the power of the speaker and is going to force us into consensus. And we're always going to be in this cloak and dagger situation where Democrats, who I consider to be much more diabolical when it comes to the rules, and Nancy Pelosi, who is, I think, an abuser of power to a level I've never seen, it's going to be interesting to see how much they try to play us and try to manipulate those rules to benefit them.
So let's talk about some of the concessions that were made. Are there any that concern you? Because just as you said, it's sort of diminished the power of the speaker. And also, look, we're just looking at a few, the single member motion to vacate versus 5, more Freedom Caucus members, as we know, on those top committees. I mean, there's a number of them. Has this just made it very difficult for Kevin McCarthy and for the GOP in general?
Well, look, when you say Freedom Caucus, most of the people in the so-called Freedom Caucus, which is the conservative wing of the party, voted for Kevin McCarthy from day one and from the first vote. So it was really just a handful of holdouts who were, not voting for Kevin McCarthy. And I would argue a lot of them, some started out principled, in my opinion, and then became just petty grievances. And that's what concerned me. Was this just out of, I just don't like Kevin McCarthy. I mean, Matt Gaetz, who's a friend, actually admitted, look, I don't care what Kevin McCarthy does. I'm never going to vote for him for speaker, which ultimately he did not. They voted present in order to get the speaker across the finish line without receiving 218 votes. So the numbers came down. But I do have a little concern about the motion to vacate the chair, meaning that any one member of Congress on the Republican side can go in and vote to remove the speaker, and then we go to another vote. So we could be doing this vote-a-rama type of series, with people, with the drama on the floor that you've seen in and out all day, every day this week. So I think that could be very disruptive, but I think it's going to be challenging no matter what. We have a narrow majority, but I think it's really important that people understand, I can't say it enough, the Republican majority, though slim as it may be, is the only thing standing between us and full-on authoritarian communism, authoritarianism. The Democrats rule by fist from Nancy Pelosi. And I think people got to see the real Hakeem Jeffries, the guy who I served with in the New York State Assembly, is a partisan guy. He is not some unifier. He talked about partisan issues. He insulted Republicans. He didn't show the decorum that I thought should have had when we announced this historic speaker vote last night.
I was going to ask you about that, Congresswoman. I was very surprised. I was watching it live, and I've seen a lot of these speeches, and you have certainly. And I couldn't believe that he was talking. He sort of used the maturity to Mar-a-Lago, and then he got into QAnon. He got into all these things that just seemed not appropriate for the moment. What was your reaction? And then Kevin McCarthy came up and actually complimented Hakeem Jeffries and talked about how we have to work together. And it was very different sort of tones of speeches, I thought.
Well, the contrast is exactly what people need to see. I served with Hakeem, as I said, in the New York State Assembly, partisan, creeping on communism coming in from the state assembly, very, arrogant, no consideration and no attempt to reach out to the Republicans, really talked about himself. And then Kevin McCarthy gave a very magnanimous speech. It was a speech about his biography. Many of us already knew it, but I've heard great, feedback from my district about Kevin's speech and how he was trying to be unifying. He has an open door. He really wants to grow the institution. And, the test is on him. We're going to see what happens. But this is Hakeem Jeffries. He's just another New York Assembly Democrat used to controlling everything in the spirit of Chuck Schumer. And that's what I saw. I saw everybody, all these Democrats, very few of them coming out of the state assembly that I think have the leadership or have been really, carved on tough issues to really lead. And that's what I see of Hakeem. It was very disappointing for me to see his speech. Really disappointing, and I've heard that repeatedly from a lot of people on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, a lot of people. In fact, on social media, they were going crazy about it. And it also just seems like it sort of drew the battle lines, if you will. And a lot of people said, hey, there's another moment for that. That's not the moment to do it. You know, I also want to talk about, after being sworn in, Kevin McCarthy couldn't leave the Capitol without thanking one person. Take a listen to this.
But I do want to especially thank President Trump. I don't think anybody should doubt his influence. He was with me from the beginning. Somebody wrote the doubt of whether he was there, and he was all in. He would call me and he would call others. And he really was, I was just talking to him tonight, helping get those final votes. And so thank you, President Trump.
So how much impact do you think the former president had? We were hearing reports that he also was calling a number of these members, these holdouts. There's a screen that Bloomberg has, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene also shows Donald Trump, it looks like, on the phone, passing it to Rosendale. How much do you think he made a difference here?
Yeah, I think he did. That was kind of a funny picture, and actually, you got to give Marjorie Taylor Greene credit for a little bit of sense of humor there. She was handing the phone to Rosendale, and it looks like he's saying, talk to the hand, because the face isn't listening. If you notice, he's got his hand up. But look, I think Trump tried to get people on board to understand that, look, at some point, you got to make a deal. And I hate to call it that, but we had an agreement. It's going to be very difficult to operate this majority with such narrow margins with what we saw. If this is what it's going to look like, we are in for a long term. This is going to be day in and day out, not being able to come to consensus if we're going to, I mean, I'm all for empowering members, but these people have to understand, take the personalities out of it. Let's get right down to what's actually going on in terms of the policies that we're enacting that are going to protect the American people, that are going to protect this nation from the enemies that we have around the world. They can't be watching us in chaos every single day and think that we're going to be standing up for our allies around the world.
Absolutely. Time to get to work. Congresswoman Claudia Tenney, thank you so much. Great to have you here on such an important day.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year.